Good morning, good evening, whatever time of day it is for you. Welcome to this thing that I do called Thor's Entertainment. I am Thor, and today I'm doing another Mortal Kombat 1 finisher video. And following up on the video that I did on Friday, I'm going to be doing two different Havik finisher videos this week. Previously, I did a video for the Kablooey brutality that he has, which I would consider his hardest brutality to get. And after having done that, I now want to do something substantially easier, so I'm focusing on one of his fatalities, RAD-ious Incision. And teamed up with my Havik is going to be the kameo Mavado, which I would probably consider the very best cameo for Havik just because it opens up a lot of combo options for him.
You'll document my revolt for posterity.
Talk about delusions of grandeur.
So like I was saying, this video is going to be acting as something of a follow-up to the previous one I did on Friday with Havik, which is the very first finisher video I have done for that character. And in that video on Friday, I was highlighting his brutality Kablooey, which it may not necessarily be the hardest brutality for Havik to get, but it was the hardest one for me when I was using that character. But after having done that, I wanted to do a video where, one, Havik actually ended up winning because I lost in the previous video, but also I wanted a video where the finisher was a bit easier to get. And there's really nothing easier in Mortal Kombat to get finisher-wise than the fatalities because all you have to do is just win the fight. So the goal here is very simple. We're going to try and win the entire set, and in the final match when I finally do win the set, at that point we're going to go for the fatality RAD-ious Incision, which is the second fatality for Havik. Second in the sense that you have to unlock it. I think you can actually do it as long as you know the inputs, regardless of whether or not you have it unlocked, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But yeah, ultimately I wanted to double down on the Havik videos for this week, mostly because the first video I ever did for him was on Friday, and, well, he lost in it. And I kind of felt bad for the character, or at least people who may like that character. Having my introductory video for that character be a loss kind of sucks, even if it is for a brutality that I don't really think a whole lot of people probably get to see. So to compensate for the loss, and for anyone who likes this character and maybe actually wants to see him perform well, I went ahead and just started doing another video to release in the same week. That way we get one loss and one win. That way we kind of balance things out with having one loss and one win. And as possibly my way of overcompensating for the very first Havik video being a loss, I went ahead and picked out one of the finisher videos for him that I would consider probably one of the best fights I had with Havik. Or at the very least one of the most entertaining because it ends up being very, very competitive. At least in my eyes, that felt like probably one of the better corrective actions I could give Havik. After having suffered a loss, why not give him a video where he ends up coming out on top in a very close and competitive fashion? I mean, we've already kind of seen what this fight is going to be like in the very first round because I ended up winning it with just 5 health remaining. And this second round is going in the exact same direction because it ends up also being something of a nail-biter with both of us well below 30% health by the time the second round is decided. And I end up securing something of a comeback, considering that johnnycage was at about half health whenever I was around 50 remaining health, I think. And what really ended up securing it was landing that throw at the very end, which I canceled into Mavado's trap, which once I was holding johnnycage in place, I went ahead and went for the fatal blow for Havik, which anytime you do a fatal blow after the throw, which you cancel into Mavado's trap, it's going to scale really, really badly. Like, I only did about 240 damage whenever a fatal blow typically does around 350 by default, unless, you did something that scales it really badly or the person is mashing buttons to defend against the damage of the fatal blow, which is a thing. So yeah, that process can definitely reduce the damage quite a bit, but it does not matter. It did just enough to get the job done, and we take the very first victory against johnnycage. And looking back on it, johnnycage had 3 bars of meter, so I'm not 100% sure why he did not break there, but I mean, I'll take the win. And this round even continues the trend I was starting of having to come back from a life deficit against johnnycage, which, gee whiz, I do end up managing to do that, taking him back below 30% health just like myself. And yet again, pulling off a victory after having a really big life deficit that I put myself in versus my opponent. So yeah, this one was shaping up to be a very close fight. And here we go, this is the moment when I end up securing the round against johnnycage. 3 comebacks in a row, accomplished. And it definitely did feel like an accomplishment against this person because they had a pretty decent record. This johnnycage user had about 11 more wins than losses from what I saw at the very beginning whenever we got matched. And at the time, I was really starting to figure out Havik as well because I had 14 more wins than losses myself. So it seemed like it was going to be a match against two people who had pretty good knowledge of their characters, and were finding a lot of success in the Kombat League as a result of it. Well, maybe not a lot, but they were finding success. I actually have no idea what you would consider a lot whenever it comes to the Kombat League, so we'll just go with success. But in any case, I was definitely right because there were definitely nothing but close matches the entire time up to this point. I mean, yeah, I managed to come back and win the first 3 rounds, but ultimately Johnny Cage did have to put me in those positions where I had to come back in the first place, so he was not playing badly at all. And had a couple of things just gone differently, Johnny Cage definitely could have won those rounds. And the trend continues because yet again, I'm the first one below 30% health in this round as well, so another comeback is in order if I want to win, and I definitely end up dropping my opportunity to come back in this fight because at one point I managed to get the jump in against Johnny Cage, land a couple of hits, and I was supposed to go for the command grab for Havik and summon Mavado and then go into Fatal Blow, which I don't know if it would have been enough to defeat him, but it would have been really, really close if it didn't. And as a result of my screw up, Johnny Cage has one last opportunity to close out this round, and finally he picks up a round victory of his own. Which brings us to a third and final round in this second match of the set, and I hope that for once I finally do not find myself in a life deficit that I have to come back from, but we will see what happens. Which actually, as I look ahead in my footage for this round, this is probably one of, if not the closest round consistently from start to finish between Johnny Cage and myself. Like, at no point do either of us really establish a commanding life lead of any kind. It's kind of just a few health points away from each other pretty much the entire time. And by a few, I mean like maybe never more than a few hundred at a time. Like, there's not a scenario in this round where we end up with like a 50% life lead on each other or anything like that. But even though I did manage to maybe kind of defeat the scenarios where I was consistently having to come back from a gigantic life lead, I do not defeat Johnny Cage in this round. I just much more closely lose this round. Which means Johnny Cage picks up a point in the set. We are now tied 1-1, and we go into a third and final match to determine who is going to be the winner of the entire set. Oh, and I have not mentioned something so far in this matchup that probably I should have mentioned earlier, but I mean, better late than never. So all of my footage for Havik, besides the kablooey brutality that I released on Friday, all of that footage was recorded from gameplay that I had in the previous season for the Kombat League. And that's kind of important because in the previous season, that was prior to the patch that reduced the damage for Mavado, and prior to the patch where he does not take as much health away from your character. Like if I was doing this today, Havik would have 1050 health, and some of these combos would not be breaking 300 damage. So yeah, this was basically day 1 Mavado paired up with Havik. So if you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, that's not as much damage as I'm getting off these combos, or that health just does not look like it is correct for Havik and Mavado, well, that's why. And oh goodness, the connection is starting to fail on us. We're getting really, really glitchy, and we're kind of getting some freeze frames there. In any case, though, I end up picking up that round, so I only need one more round to win the entire set. But getting back to what I was talking about earlier, with this basically being day 1 Mavado, even though he has been patched to do a little bit less damage and also patched to the point where he doesn't take as much health away from your character, I would still consider Mavado the best kameo fighter to pair up with Havik. And if I'm being completely honest, I do not even use Mavado to its fullest potential with Havik, but there are just a lot of different ways that he can extend combos for Havik that otherwise would not be as lengthy or as damaging as they are. Like even some of his sweeps turn into full combos with Mavado, and that's just awesome. It takes a character that is kind of lacking in some areas and makes him legitimately dangerous in the right hands. Now, I'm not saying I'm in the right hands, but I did have a lot of success with Havik and Mavado, so I think there is definitely something there. And alright, one of us finally won a very decisive round, and unfortunately it was not me. Johnny Cage ended up winning with me doing not a whole lot of damage to him whatsoever in that previous round, and we now find ourselves in the third and final round of this match, which will decide the entire set. And starting things off in this round, I was actually in pretty good position even though I lost that previous round because I didn't use any meter, so I have 3 bars of meter to start this round, and Johnny Cage didn't even have a bar of meter to start this one off. Granted, he has full bars basically now, but that was not the case when we started off. And that's pretty significant because I still had the opportunity to break any major damaging combos that Johnny Cage may land on me in this fight, and he wouldn't have the same opportunity for himself, or he couldn't really use meter to start off the fight to maybe extend combos or something like that. so that felt like a pretty significant advantage to start things off. But we're almost done, so I can safely say that I do not even end up using those bars of meter even though I thought they were an advantage, and I end up winning with an uppercut to Johnny Cage when he was jumping in against me.
Fatality. Havik wins.
And there it is. That is the RAD-ious Incision Fatality for Havik. And that is also going to be my redemption video for Havik as well, considering I did not do him any favors by doing my very first video on him and making it a video where he ends up losing the set. So here you go, Havik. You get a win this time around. And it is a very fun one that had a bunch of comebacks and just in general a bunch of very, very close rounds. Although Havik is the Chaos character, so maybe he likes the chaotic approach of starting off with a video where he lost as opposed to winning, kind of subverting our expectations. So yeah, that's what I'll call it. It definitely wasn't just poor planning on my part or something like that. Anyway, yeah, that was the RAD-ious Incision Fatality for Havik, and I'll be sure to show it one more time at the very end of this video, that way we can all enjoy it one final time before we part ways. So yeah, get very familiar with the pairing of Havik and Mavado, with the exception of that video on Friday. Every other video I do with Havik features this combination. And I don't really plan on using Havik again unless something really crazy happens, like maybe he gets new finishers or something like that. But currently I have no plans to use him past all of his finisher videos or all of Mavado's finisher videos, since I got both of their finishers completed with them as a team. Which it was a very fun team. This is actually one of my preferred teams after I finally gave it a chance. And I wasn't really expecting that. I'm not necessarily saying it's a good team, but I enjoyed playing as these two. But anyway, I won't drag this out any longer. Just thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to check out some of the other finisher videos I have on the Thor's Entertainment channel if that is something that interests you. But yeah, take care, and I'll see you next time.
Finish him! Fatality. Havik wins.